All right, let's go. All right, we are.
Right on the rims.
All right, so let's go ahead and get started. It is new year. So this is our home ownership discovery class, what you need to know about buying a house in 2024. I am joined with the top loan officer here in Cincinnati, Mr. Vincent DeRisi, and we are UMortgage. So we start with that. We're UMortgage, and my name is Chad Curtin, joined with Vincent DeRisi. We're excited to do this class. We've done this now for going on 2 years. It's evolved to a weekly. We basically figured out, hey, the best thing that we can do for our clients, clients being both buyers and real estate agents, is to make sure that we are bringing as much education in an ever-changing environment. So before we get going, maybe just give a little intro and
yeah, but
anything you want to talk about.
yeah, piggyback, bringing the value right to the clients and to our referral partners is what we really value ourselves on. As like Chad mentioned, every month, every week, I feel like, especially now our market here, it's ever changing. So we want to make sure we have those tactics available for our clients. But yeah, Chad and I have been together for a little over 10 years. And yeah, like we mentioned, we love to bring education, bring extra content so that people can obviously, get a little bit more familiar with us, so that when we do see people out and about, it's not like, oh, we've never heard of you. Well, we try to be as front facing as possible.
It's great. And we have some amazing content we're going to share. There is some great new statistics that have come out, some really cool new news articles that have come out. And then we're going to kind of walk into what it takes to actually get pre-approved. And then we're going to talk about what it takes to get the offer accepted. So we're going to really cover a lot, and we'll keep everybody here for maybe 30, 40 minutes at the most. Our New Year's resolution is to be ending on time.
Efficient.
Yes, be efficient. Yes, that's the word. So, all right. So I mentioned the headlines. So the one right there in the middle is the new article that just came out, posted by Zillow. If you look real closely on there, you'll see number 2 is Cincinnati, but also right behind Cincinnati is Columbus, Ohio, and Indianapolis, Indiana. Okay, so we're really wedged in there, right into the number 2, 3, and 4 hottest markets going into 2024, which is exciting. All right, and it comes with some really positive things. It comes with some challenges that we need to be aware of. But we're going to break down through this class what this is going to mean to if you own a house now and if you're looking to purchase a house. But we shared also on the screen a couple of different articles that have come out, probably the last like 3 or 4 months.
Yeah,
these are all the articles. You moved to Cincinnati 10+ years ago.
Yes, sir.
All right, and so give us your take on what you have seen just this past year. Obviously, been in the mortgage industry for 10 years, but in the last year, what have you seen that's different than the previous 9?
Cincinnati was always looked at with, it's like, oh, you're going to move Midwest in the middle of nowhere, right? Well, that obviously
that's what it's always been.
That's what it's always. What my friends would always be like, why are you moving there? There's nothing to do, nothing. Well, obviously we know there's a ton to do here, and it's easy to do it, and I think that news has caught on, obviously, with the nation, and I feel like the coasts are coming inward for that, not just affordability, but also like easier type of life, right? Not mortgage related, but it is, right? Nowadays you can kind of work anywhere and everywhere, right? Mm-hmm. With the new ways of obviously employment after COVID. So I think people have been like, oh, you know what? I'm going to go live a different, easier way of life / affordability. And the Midwest, obviously, we can see has almost dominated this. I mean, Florida is always going to be on there, right? Mm-hmm. No matter what, it just is, right? With people retiring and stuff like that. But it's funny how you see Indiana, Columbus, and Cincinnati up in, and same as Buffalo. You know, I mean, same type of deal. It's a up and coming, but the affordability in Buffalo, people are now like, oh, you know what? Let's go live a little bit more comfortably.
Yeah, I want to touch on what you just said there, affordability. So for those of you on the call right now, you may be thinking, affordability, what are you talking about, right? Prices have increased significantly here in Cincinnati, and you know, the projection is they're going to continue to increase next year. Interest rates are what they are, but you know, affordability, when you look at it as a whole and what the other options are, and you look at, you know, areas that you mentioned, whether it's on the coast, New York, California, Florida, you know, parts of Texas, the affordability, you know, we're a nationwide company, and we on a regular talk to other branches, other loan officers. We're in great community here at UMortgage where we get to share a lot of great information. And, you know, it is very interesting to see our friends in Utah, what their average loan amounts are, average purchase price, 500, 600, 700,000. You know, Texas, same thing. So there is a, you know, there's a perception and then there's a reality. Okay, so Cincinnati, Indianapolis, and Columbus are in that affordable range. So something to keep in mind. And speaking of affordable, so the other thing we're going to kind of transition into is, you know, another article that came out, and it talks about Cincinnati rent. Okay, so whenever you talk about mortgages and buying a property for the first time, typically you're making that comparison of, you know, should we buy or should we rent? And you know, renting, and the statistics on renting and the cost of renting is extremely, like, very interesting when you really break it down. And this is a great article that says that Cincinnati's increased 7.9% this past year in rent, and it's one of the top in the nation. So, you know, you talk to home buyers all the time. You talk to people that are currently renting. What is their motivation that you're seeing for getting out of that rent?
It's going nowhere. It's wasted money, right? That's the biggest thing that we talk to the clients about. Of, okay, you want to grow a portfolio for yourself, even if you don't want to buy multiple properties, you just want to focus on maybe your one property and focus on yourself. Well, obviously the rent is just going to go to that investor's pocket. Whereas you purchase a house, and we've talked about this many a times, you have that automated savings every single month, right? And you touched on this all the time, just the emotional aspect of being a homeowner, you know, seeing and pulling up to your own property, your own community is honestly priceless, okay? Whereas when you have that rent aspect, you're relying on other parts of the community to build up where you live.
Right. Yeah, and you know, renting is thought of as temporary, whereas when you purchase a house, you are vesting into that community. So when you think of schools, the churches, the local bakery, whatever it is, right? You're vested in that area for the most part, and there's a level of commitment and pride and wanting that area to succeed. So there's lots of statistics we're going to talk about, but the biggest one that came out was the difference between a homeowner and a renter is 44% wealth. So homeowners on average have 44% more wealth than a renter. And the number one key to that is what owning a house can do for you financially. A mortgage and owning a house is you'd like to say this, it is a built-in savings plan. Okay, so every month when you put money in your mortgage or make your mortgage payment, right, you're putting money into an investment, money into something that is gaining value, right, as you're paying off the debt. So that difference there is equity, but it's also wealth. So every month you're gaining wealth by owning a house, whereas the renting is just just getting to the next month, right? Right.
A lot of it was this, when rates were starting to shoot up last year, that's where that discussions Well, those discussions really got a little bit more in depth. You know, I talked to a person who said, you know, we're going to wait till next year. Well, okay, let's break down the numbers and see what that means to you, right? In regards to her rent being almost $2,000 a month, right? So if you, okay, you know, Mrs. Pre-approved buyer, you're going to wait for rents to come down. Well, you're going to spend another 24 grand, right, in your rent for the year. And house appreciation is probably going to be another 3 to 5%, right? So let's just say that the house that you want to buy today is going to be another 20 grand more. You just lost 44 grand without even, you know, thinking about, okay, what does my monthly payment look like for this new house? So that kind of brought light bulbs to her. And she was like, you know what, you're right. I don't care if my interest rate is, at this point, it was like 8%. We can always refinance. We can always have a game plan down the road. And she's savings. She's saving each and every month because she owns the house. And she also has that 44 grand in her pocket that would have been gone.
Yeah, that's right. So a lot of what we're talking about is, you know, the difference between renting and owning. If you're first-time home buyer on here, we do have a really great, it's basically an application that we can show you the difference between those two things, and you can see how you can build your wealth. Sometimes you're going to be, sometimes, not all the time. What we see on the screen right now is how rent has increased since 1988. Okay, and I mean, it looks like a ride at Kings Island, how it's going straight up. But sometimes you are going to come into a home purchase with a higher mortgage payment than your rent. Okay, and maybe more majority of the time. Okay, but over time, when you look at, you know, the big picture, mortgage is 30 years long, right? Typically, where that payment for the most part is going to stay very steady. Compare that mortgage payment on that graph going back 30 years and what's going to happen eventually. Your rent is going to be more expensive than that mortgage payment. And at the same time, what we've been talking about, you're building in wealth every month, a built-in savings plan. So on the topic of, we already covered that, that's the, you know, homeowners 40 times greater wealth than renters. So on the topic of first-time home buyers, I have some kind of hot off the presses statistics here. So first-time home buyers made up 32% of all buyers, and this is in the actual tri-state area, Cincinnati area. Okay, so this is from the actual Cincy MLS. Okay, so they do a extremely extensive survey. It's like this thick. Okay, and then they break all the data down, and then they give us, because some of this is based off of questions and some of it's statistics. So actual first-time home buyers, 32% of the market. Okay, now that's up from last year. Last year it was one of the lowest years we've ever had. Last year was 26%. So I guess last year would be 2022 was 26%. Okay, we're up to 32 now. We're still down from what is a very long average of 38%. Okay, since 1981, it has been approximately 38% of the entire market. Okay, so you think about that, you kind of let that digest, and what does that tell you? Okay, number one, affordability and the market and the competitiveness has pushed out some of the first-time home buyers. Okay, it's obvious, the numbers have dropped. Okay, very considerably. We went from 38% on a 30-some year, almost 40-year average of 38%. We dropped down all the way to 26%. That is a humongous jump. So that is a actual affordability in certain brackets of price range. Okay, so that, you know, my first house I purchased was $125,000. Okay, very hard to find $125,000 house. Okay, in any market right now. Okay, so that's what we're talking about, squeezing out that first-time home buyer, so make it a little bit different. Typical age of a first-time home buyer, to no surprise, has gone up. For the longest time, it was 27 years. It's up to 35-year-old. Wow. Okay, so the typical age of a first-time home buyer is now 35 years old. Okay, So anybody on the call that is under that, you're ahead of the game, which is exciting. The average, you want to take a stab at this? Vinny hasn't seen these yet. Take a stab at average down payment for a first-time home buyer.
7%.
Wow, okay, very close. This is why he's the best. 8% is the average, and that's the highest in 26 years. So what's that tell you? Affordability, again, especially in that bracket of your first house. Affordability, you're saving more so that you can put down more to lower your amount. You're also most likely competing with others. So the more you're putting down, the better your offer is going to be.
I wonder if some of that has to do with maybe even appraisal gaps too,
Sure.
right? Where they have to come up with that difference.
I absolutely do. I think it all kind of like plays it together. If you don't know what appraisal gap is, get us on the phone. We're not talking about it on this, but we will 100% talk your ear off on what that is. All right, couple more. 38% of first-time home buyers said that what was the hardest part about preparing to be able to buy or just buying in general? 38% said this one thing.
I think maybe going through the offer process.
That's probably what I would say, right?
Right.
But it's actually the hardest part was saving up for down payment. Okay, so saving up. So that's where some of our down payment assistance programs come into play. We have an amazing 1% down conventional loan that would help in that area. So 38% first-time home buyers said the hardest step in buying a house was the saving up. And then the follow-up to that is, how did you save up for both the down payment and just the affordability piece? Here's what they cut out: luxury goods, entertainment, and clothing.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, obviously you have to have clothing, but do you need the new clothes, right? So pretty interesting. Two more things, right? Actually, last thing. So of all of the, I guess, transactions, purchases in this area, 80% of them were financed. Okay, so I know there's times, there's months, especially there's in the last few years where we feel like everybody is using cash to purchase because every time one of our buyers is competing with someone, they're competing with the cash buyer. The reality is that for every 8 transactions of that are financed, only 2 of them are cash, right? So really interesting. I personally, I'm a statistic dork because this takes perception and puts it into reality. This is really what's happening on things. So on that point, if you want to talk about what's happening this month, or I guess last month versus the past year, this is the statistics from last month on actual Cincinnati market.
Yeah, I think we've been seeing a little bit, just personally, a little bit of a dip with the holidays coming into play. We're still seeing multiple offers on property. So we do need to have a strategic plan when we do put in an offer. So just because we think it's the winter months and the holidays, you still have to go into that mindset of, hey, I'm going to be competing against somebody, whether it's cash or another financed offer. More than likely will be another financed offer.
Yeah.
So what can we show to make a difference between those other 2 offers, right? Even in the slower months of the year, right? We're still getting multiple offers.
You touched this, but just to be clear, when you say multiple offers, does that mean that the buyer is going to be making several offers on that house? What does that mean?
Great question. Offers. So we're talking about multiple buyers putting offers on one house.
Okay.
So we'll have our buyer, Mrs. Jones, Bank B's buyer, Mrs. Smith, and Bank C's buyer, Harold, putting an offer in on that same house.
Harold doesn't get a Mr. or Mrs.
No,
just Harold.
He's rogue.
All right.
So we got to make sure that we have detailed pre-approval letter, right? Detailed timeline on here. We're not just trying to wing it and throw a round number to try to make it go by. Because also, as you can see, the median sales prices are still increasing, even in these months. Okay, so we have to make sure that you as the buyer are prepared for maybe an increased offer or an increased purchase price so that it is affordable for you. We're seeing these houses still fly off the market. If they're priced right, and in certain areas, they're gone pretty quickly. So being ready, having that pre-approval in hand, knowing your numbers is just as important as it was in spring as it is now.
You hit the nail on the head. So to kind of switch gears here a little bit, out of the market talk, out of the first-time home buyer and the rent, something everybody wants to know about: what is going on with interest rates, right? So what is going on with interest rates? It's a lot of talk last 2 years about interest rates on the rise. Now the new sentiment, the new talk is we may see a little bit of relief from that this year. And the Fed has actually come out and said that there could be cuts. Had that first opportunity today, not happening today. So this is the thing that we have to be very careful of, okay? It's, what does it mean that rates could decrease, okay? And the expectation is we have probably seen our height, right? We've probably seen the max, hopefully. But it doesn't mean that, rates are going to be 2% anytime soon, okay? I think that if we're looking at the whole scale of the entire year coming up, I don't know if that means, in 2 weeks or in 12 months, but we will see rates tick down from where they were this past year. So that's the best that we can do as far as any projections for what interest rates are.
I'm gonna put you on the spot. What's your projections? What are you thinking? Your 20 plus years in the industry.
I think that we will see here's what I'll project.
Yes, that was the question.
We're going to see an extremely competitive market in the spring and this summer. Probably, two of the most competitive quarters that we've seen in a long time, and I think that will be brought on by the conversation of interest rates going lower. Okay, so sometimes when you start talking about things, it's almost as if they've happened. Take for instance, okay, this is reality. October, I think it was October 15th, 18th, something like that, was the highest our interest rates have been. Okay, this is just this past 3 months ago. Okay, we went over 8% as an average as a nation. Okay, by mid-December, we were a full point less than that, right? And then in the last 2 to 3 weeks, ever since they said rates were dropping, they've gone up, right? So what I find really interesting is actually, we'll come back to this one, but if you go to the next chart, is what does actual interest rates do for you, right? So here's a really interesting chart, the difference between 7.5% and 5.5%, okay? So I said this to you, see if you remember this, I said this to you 3 years ago. No, I'm sorry. I said this to you last year, okay? And we said,
but I'm gonna believe you.
Last year, when rates were at their highest, we said it's actually an advantage for people that are buying right now, because you are basing your budget off of the highest that it's going to ever be as far as affordability for this house that you're buying right now.
Right.
Okay. So the cuts that you're making, cutting out luxury items, maybe taking a look at, do I really need 15 different of these streaming services, right? The true story, and all these other things. Those are the items that you're going to kind of like take out, and you're going to budget, and you're going to base it off of that 8% rate, that 7.5% rate that you're at, right? So when rates come down, whether it's this year, next year, the year after that, when they come down, you will you will be able to refinance, okay? And you'll be able to see. What's really interesting about interest rates is, I was thinking about this before we got on, we're refinancing someone today, actually this month, okay, that closed on a VA loan 6 months ago, okay? Well, when he bought, it was 6 months ago, so rates were higher, but also his credit
Mm.
was lower. So the combination of his credit increasing pretty significantly
I love it.
and a little bit of a reduction in interest rates allowed for his situation, his personal situation, for it to be a benefit for him to refinance today. And I mean, it's saving him $350. So if you look at this chart, it's kind of interesting, regardless of what price point you're at. If you look at the top, the 7.5, and you look at the bottom, 5.5, it's about $500 difference. Okay, you're going to fall into that range whether you purchase now and then when you refinance lower. This range is where you're going to be. Okay, and so our friend that's taking advantage of it now, $350 savings. In these examples and these price points, you're looking at when you drop 2 full points, you're looking at $500 savings. So this is the mindset, and this is what we probably should do a better job of getting out and letting people see this, is that, hey, you're purchasing this now, you're purchasing an asset that is going to increase in value, projected significantly over the next handful of years. We were projected to lose value, not go up in 2023. Guess what we did?
We gained.
We gained, and we gained in the teens. Okay, not a little bit. Okay, so it goes back to, I think in 7th grade you learn supply and demand. Okay, look at the amount of houses that are on the market. Look at the amount of buyers that are on the market. There is nothing that is going to magically fix the inventory. We're always going to continue to have buyers. You all right? Is this boring to you?
Not at all.
All right. So
We could spend an hour on this chart alone.
exactly. So you look at that and you say, okay, if I can get into the house at a 7.5% and I can afford that $2,600, $2,500, $2,700 payment, okay? Don't base it off of knowing that you're going to get it down $500. But if you can get in it and you can afford it and you can make cuts, you're getting in that house, because 5 years from now, when your rate is now 5.5%, that house at 400 is going to be now worth 470. Okay, so you're now going to have a house that has 70,000 plus in equity in it, and you've reduced your payment by $500. That right there is why people are purchasing now, for that alone. I don't know if you can do this, but if you can go backwards on the slides, that would be great. There you go. All right, so this is what's projected over the next 5 years: 71,000 increase on a 400,000 starting price. Okay, and this is just based off of percentages, not based off of $400,000 loan amounts. But if you look at that, that is an incredible return on investment. What on 400,000? How much are you putting down?
You could, I mean, even with a step-up buyer, 5% down can still be doable.
They're totally accessible, right? Step-up buyers.
Even a first-time home buyer, 3% down.
Right. So 5% is going to be 20,000, right? Throw in closing costs, you're at 25,000, right? So $25,000 investment to be able to gain 71,000 in the next 5 years. That's just 5 years. Okay. So really, and this is, obviously why we're in this business. This stuff really excites us. The dream of home ownership, to help people get to the next step as far as financially. These are the things that we really like to talk to our buyers about. So we should probably talk about the kind of the overall process of purchasing a house, and the overall process of what we do here at UMortgage, because obviously we take a very educational approach to the process, a little bit outside the box of the normal banker, even though we're both wearing suits and ties. Very outside the box on what we talk about. And the key to this is getting a really strong application and then going through our steps here of purchasing a house, which application, collecting documentation, pre-approval, consultation. That's where we really go over your options and show you what's available to you, not just one option. We are really going in depth into what it means to purchase a house, what your options are as far as rates, refinancing down the road, and then obviously getting you ready to make that offer, which we'll go into. So let's jump into the steps of being pre-approved here. Three pillars of being pre-approved. Credit, income, asset. Why don't you walk us through what you're doing when you're meeting with your buyers, and what you're going over and what's important with credit.
I kept this on the top of my head when you mentioned this before about, potentially the clients going in to their highest payment ever,
Mhm.
right? And their payment being higher than their rent payment, potentially, right? It's not in every case, but potentially, most likely. So we really dig into the credit, right? We dig into what our buyer is actually paying for each and every month, right? So if we have a buyer that's maybe saved up a good amount of money, what could we maybe get rid of to help offset those payment obligations, okay? So credit is very, very important. As we've seen, the cost of items, the cost of borrowing has increased as well, right? So when you have a better credit score, your cost to borrow will go down. So we've really, really been focusing and honing in on credit lately because of the cost of borrowing and just the cost of goods in general. So we dig deep on those revolving debts. What's the utilization on those? Can we get rid of one of those revolving debts to help offset your monthly payment? And then maybe get disciplined and say, hey, that Discover card that you're using, maybe try not to use that in the next 3 months, right? So that you can see how it feels to not have that extra $200 a month payment. Obviously, we have to pay stuff on time, right? That's always super important. New credit or the history of credit, how long someone has credit is very, very important as well. Someone who maybe only has like young credit, only for a few months, is not gonna have that good of a credit score with someone, like Chad's age, who's been having a credit card for, 20 years now. So that is also super important. And we have game plans for people who have new credit. Maybe we could get them added as an authorized user with a family member, so on and so forth. So really taking the time, honing in on this, and coming up with tactics to better our clients' cost of borrowing, whether it be a different type of program or even just like we talk about all the time, lower mortgage insurance. Credit is so important for us to really, really dig in on.
I love that, man. It really sounds like that's one of the most influential things to the loan program of a buyer. And a lot of times when you hear a focus being around credit, it's just kind of focused on bad credit to be able to do it. It sounds like what you're saying is it's like, moderate credit to really good, average to even better, good to great kind of approach to the credit consultation.
Well, like you said, this is where I think we separate ourselves from others, right? We can't help someone save money, right? We can give them ideas and tactics about it, but this is like where we make the big bucks, right? We have the tools to tell someone, hey, this is what you need to do to get from a 680 to a 740, right?
Yeah.
And you and I have seen thousands of credit reports, and just reviewing them and knowing how the tricks of the trade work, keeping that information in and not explaining it to the client is doing a disservice. At the end of the day, they know what their job is, right? We can't tell them to go get more overtime. We can't tell them to go start working more, but we can come up with additional tactics for credit because we have those tools available to us.
Yeah. Okay. Really great. So income. So there's 3 pillars. Credit, you just covered beautifully. Income or employment. Talk to us about that. What are you looking at? The big thing's documentation, right?
100%, and asking the right questions.
Okay.
How long, making sure we have the timeline correct with our clients, making sure that if we see an overtime on one of those pay stubs, hey, have you done that for a year and a half, 2 years? Can we get the past year's pay stub and the pay stub before that, to try to maximize our buyers' buying power, right? Because as we've been seeing, right, houses have been increasing every year. So we want to make sure our buyers can keep up with that increasing housing values. So if we need to squeeze out, even if it's $50, $75 a month in overtime,
yeah,
$100 a month in bonus, we want to make sure we're going to be able to use that with the proper documentation so that we could squeeze out that extra $5,000 on an offer
Sure.
on a house, right?
Okay. You know, the big thing that I always say, you know, is when you're buying a house, it is going to be tedious as far as some of the paperwork that's asked for. And trust me when I say this, if we're asking for it, we need it, right? Like that's the key. And if you ever have a question, just to ask why that's required, because that's a big one. There's always an answer, and it is confusing. And I see that with income, and also with the next pillar, which is going to be down payment or assets. Okay, so we just talked about you know, first-time home buyers, the highest it's been in 26 years as far as you know, coming up with a down payment. We list a handful of options for down payments. One stat I didn't read off was 52% of all down payments came from savings. Okay, so that's clearly the most common where a down payment's coming from. But there's hundreds of different areas of where down payment can come from, right?
Just about.
All except for shoebox of cash, right? Those are where we don't want down payment to come from. So talk to us about how we educate our clients and our buyers on what is going to be required of them as far as cash to close, what they can expect, and where it can come from.
Yeah, so we'll go from, you know, where it could come from at first, right? We're going to make sure that it's a reliable source, right? The famous words that we like to say is seasoned and or sourced, right? So the funds need to be seasoned depending on the product that we're using for a certain amount of days. What that means is they need to be in your account, in that special account that you have set aside for 30 to 60 days, whatever the case may be. So it's in that account. It can't just be deposited the day before from cash. And then sourced, whether it's a gift or it's coming from maybe the sale of a car, you know, one way, shape, or form, we're able to paper trail those funds, right? We're able to document it accordingly.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going into great detail, and sometimes some people don't have those funds saved. So we come up with other creative ideas of maybe a family member. Maybe there's an Uncle Joe that you need to give a call to. Tax season is right around the corner. That is a big percentage of where down payment comes from around this time.
Great.
You know, 401k, I feel like, you know, some people frown upon it, but I feel like it's an investment to an investment, you know, and especially if it's someone who's young, they're probably going to get that back in there twofold in the next 2 to 3 years, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So 401k, gift, down payment assistance are also available. But I think the biggest thing right now that we're trying to focus on as a team that we talked about this morning, tax refunds, right? Making sure that people know that we can use those funds for down payment.
Yeah. So to clarify, you said the money has to be in that account, right? And it has to be there for 30 to 60 days, depending on the product. If it's coming from a tax refund, if it's coming from a stock or a bond you're cashing out, or a 401k that you're cashing out, do we need to cash those out ahead of time and get them into our savings account?
The paper trail supersedes or exceeds, however, supersedes that seasoned requirement, right? As long as you can paper trail where those funds are coming from, that's a reliable source and an acceptable source for down payment.
So the 30 to 60 day seasoning can be that you can see it in your 401k.
Correct.
Going back to, you know, 3 months ago,
right? There
it was in the 401k. Boom, now you're pulling it out.
And
so
vice versa.
Okay.
For the tax return, you're sourcing it from your
Sure.
actual tax returns,
Mm-hmm.
and then seeing that transfer over from the IRS. So that supersedes the 30-day requirement because we're paper sourcing that transfer.
Beautiful. Okay. So then cash to close, everybody's different, right? Just like their income, just like your credit, just like the loan program, just like our gentleman we talked about that's refinancing today. Everybody's situation is different. So we want to make sure that we're going through that line by line.
Right.
We're talking about cash to close, meaning that's your total amount. We're not talking about putting 5% down or your cost is this much. We're talking about this is the whole, this is what's required of you. So you're prepared for that. Of course, we're going to itemize all the way down to that credit report cost of, you know, $130. So all of those different items are on there and we discuss them, but what we focus on for you is so that you know what is really going to be, you know, required of you.
Because costs and credits coming from multiple places. And on day one, we want to be as transparent as possible so we can prepare our client for that,
Right.
because there are going to be other costs outside of this, right?
Right.
Inspection, moving costs. So we want to make sure they at least know for sure what they're going to potentially come to the closing table with.
That's right. So, all right, so we take the credit, we take the income, we take the asset, we take that one individual buyer, okay? And we keep saying this, everybody is so unique, right? And we walk them through, we go back one, we walk them through what those products are that they're going to be available for them. Now,
Right.
Look, 80% of people are going to fall into the conventional, 10% are going to be FHA, VA, USDA, okay? You've got some jumbos mixed in there. And then we're going to talk about all of the rest, okay? HELOCs, non-QM, if you're an investor loan, we've got investor loans, we've got, all of these different outside of the box loans that we could literally spend 12 hours talking about the differences between all of those. Majority of people are going to fall into that, but majority of people that fall into that first section aren't necessarily, they don't have all the questions that someone does with a 2-1 buy down,
Right.
or a down payment assistance program, a bridge loan. So those are the ones that we are going to talk about if they are needed for those buyers. And the great thing is UMortgage, we have every single option available out there. We've got a construction loan that's going to be closing in 30 days. We've got a really amazing VA that you did last month with who helped out one of our veterans. Just an amazing job on that. We talked about a 1% conventional loan, which what that means is conventional loan, which is one of the best loans that you can get, and you only have to put 1% down for this product. Typically you think conventional, you think 20%. You don't really need 20% down for conventional. You can actually, majority of people can be approved with 5% down. There's a small few that are approved with 3%, and then we specifically at UMortgage have a great 1% down conventional loan. So bottom line is everybody, our job is really to kind of place you into those and know where we can kind of find a niche for you as well. We're up against time as always, but we're going to talk about the most important part, which is winning the offer. Okay. You had mentioned this earlier. This is really where we differentiate ourselves from everybody else. We're going to take everything that we went over with you in the pre-approval consultation, credit, income, assets, okay? And we're going to make sure that we put together a game plan. The key for the buyer is to understand their options, okay? Is to understand that they can go up to 300, but if they go above 300, 305, 310, it's going to be difficult, right? So while they're out looking, they're not, they're game planning on, hey, this house at 290, I can actually go above list up to 300 because it's got 15 people walking through it and it's been open for an hour, right? So having those options, knowing that you do need a bridge loan to be able to get that. So we did it last month, right? So that you're prepared for it. We have a loan closing literally this month that did a bridge loan. I think it closed in December. Okay, so these are all the different things that we have to do to make sure that we're ready to go. But the key with what I think the key is when making the offer, which what you do probably the most amazing job at, is calling the listing agent and talking to them about the buyer. Go ahead.
So that it's almost like, I won't say it's more of like a voucher. It's more of a vetting for that client that there is a real bank in the background actually reviewing those clients' documents. Regardless of the time, regardless of the day, just as much of us putting a good offer together, we want to also make sure we're available to make that phone call, because there are some things that you can't put on paper that you can obviously go over verbally with that listing agent. Yeah, you could put close fast on that pre-approval, but what does that actually mean when you're talking with the agent, right? Why can we close fast? What did we do to prepare ourselves for this actual moment, and then sprinkle in a little bit of a, icing on the top. They love the house and they have all these beautiful kids and all that kind of stuff that us as loan officers are able to say, that sometimes that buying agent's not able to go into. But that's the key. I think this is what really super separates us from that competition, because we do that +1, we do that extra step for the client.
Yeah, that's amazing. So, you know, the bottom line is that we're working on your behalf. Our goal is to get you, you know, to help you get into your dream home, get into that home that you're trying to get into. And the goal is not for you to be the highest offer, because it's not always the highest offer. It's to be the best offer. So, you know, the items as far as increasing earnest money, increasing how much you're putting down, decreasing the amount of time that it takes for us to close, maybe offering delayed financing, all the different bells and whistles that maybe this seller, it's important to them and you don't know unless you ask, right? So teaming up with one of our great real estate partners, teaming up with, you know, having the buyer, the loan officer, and the real estate agent all on the same page, knowing exactly what the game plan is for the best interest of the buyer. That's the name of the game. So that's how we are winning most offers. So that is, you know, in a gist, that's the entire class. We would like to say that we'd like to really push this information out on social media. It's one of the better platforms to be able to get that information out. Make sure that if you're not following us, make sure that you do hop on and follow us, reach out to us on that as well. And then we'll leave you with this. At the end of this, there's the survey. Okay, there should be a link in the comments, or you can scan this. This is to be able to complete the class, be able to also get the credit for the $300 at closing. So please, we need to know who's on here so that we're able to do that. But we really appreciate everybody that has joined us. This has been a lot of fun. First one for the year. Super excited to be able to provide this ongoing months. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. But thank you, Vinny, for hopping on, and we will see you next week.